Good morning, influential leaders. Today we're talking about how to have the hard conversations without being the bad guy. So if you're joining me this morning, I hope you have coffee, that you can settle in. There's going to be a lot of great nuggets for you to take away from today's live. Let's start by, I'd like to introduce myself for anyone who's new to me and who is curious about why I'm speaking about this subject. So my name's Melissa Landry. I work with leaders every day. I work with executives. I work with a variety of managers from front lines to higher levels of management. And I help them build up their people skills. So my focus is the people side of business. So like I said, I'm a certified coach. I have had extensive coach training and I do coaching every day. So I live and breathe what I talk about on these lives. So when it comes to having the hard conversation, that is something that comes up all the time. So I'd say about half my coaching sessions revolve around, there is a situation, I need to have a conversation. How do I do that? And how do I do that in a way that feels good, that is authentic to who I am? And that's going to have a good outcome for both myself, for the organization, and for the employees. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, Kelsey Ann is joining me. So Kelsey Ann, I'm going to let you give us a little bit of you, a little bit of your flavor, and maybe your thoughts on having the hard conversation, how it might show up for you.
So my name is Kelsey Ann, and I am your director of marketing. I tend to offer the employee perspective on these live trainings, and kind of showcase how we live and breathe these principles, these values in our business, and how we work with clients, and taking your strategies and tweaking it to be applicable to them. The question that you had for me was what again?
When it comes to hard conversations, either what are your thoughts or how does that play out for you?
It's changed since I've been working with you. I used to really avoid those hard conversations, the way that I would handle them, the way that I would like the language that I would use. I would use a lot of hedging in my own personal, like with whether it was conflict in the workplace or conflict, personally. I've learned to communicate completely different and just to be more direct, but to be direct like with kindness, because you can do that.
Yes. So you don't have to be the bad guy, and you can still be very direct and effective and maintain the relationship as you're doing so. So I'm back. A lot of freezing this morning. So I apologize in advance. Let's hope the technology supports us to have as smooth as possible a ride, because it's going to be a good one. So before we head into it, I want to remind everyone that it's the last day to qualify for your emotional mastery toolkit. So in case you did not hear, on Monday, I announced that I've just opened up a new cohort. So 6 seats inside my signature program, the Executive Edge. This is an 8-week leadership development program that focuses on building up your influence. It focuses on effective communication and building a great employee culture that employees are happy to be a part of and that can do good work in. So if that sounds interesting to you and you would like to take action so that you can qualify for your emotional mastery toolkit, so just so you can see what that looks like, You're going to get your EQ coaching card. So this is a deck of cards that helps you through the program, but it also helps you coach employees and coach your team. You're going to get your book, At the Heart of Leadership, How to Get Results with Emotional Intelligence. And emotional intelligence, a lot more than just a concept. This is a very practical application of it. And that is one of my specialties, and our focus through the program is taking everything that you know, all of the concepts. I work with people who have a ton of experience and who've gone through a lot of management training. So we take everything that we already know and we put it into practice. We deepen that knowledge and we break it down to a practice that you do every day. You're going to get your practicing emotional intelligence booklet. This is a great booklet to share with your team. A lot of impactful information. You're going to get this nice Pluchik wheel. So this is going to be a handy dandy at your fingertips resource. So I'm going to give you an interactive version of this, which will help you really understand how emotions play out in conversations. And then this is going to be your little cheat sheet. So you can just kind of glance at it as you're having these conversations to make this all easier. And here, these are the models that we work with through the program. So you get your little, the thing that you can stick in your back pocket and have handy as you're going through your day. So if you want access to this, you need to book your call with me to book a call. Kelsey Ann, can you drop the link so they can do that? Anyone who's interested, just go ahead, click the link, book your call. Booking a call doesn't mean you're in the program. Booking a call means we're going to talk about if this is a good fit for you. So we're going to have a conversation. It's really important to me because it's a limited number of seats for a reason. It's a very personal, high touch journey. And everyone who sits at this table matters. And it's important that it's the right people at the table. So I take a lot of time to make sure that the right people are joining. So if you think this is a good fit for you, if you're curious, go ahead, book your call. We'll explore that. And if it is of interest, and it feels like a good fit, that we will proceed to what it looks like for you to be part of this and the next steps. So booking your call is not a commitment. It's just a commitment to a conversation. And you need to do it by 5 o'clock today to be able to get your kit. All right. So Kelsey Ann, hard conversations. Let's talk about it. And for all of you joining, please drop a hi and maybe your thoughts on hard conversations. If you're watching on the replay, just put #replay so that we know that you weren't watching live, but you did watch the replay, and drop your name and your thoughts on hard conversations. And I say the word hard conversations because those are the words that are spoken to me when I get the questions. I personally don't see them as hard conversations. I see them as opportunities to work through and transform some uncomfortable situations. So I see them as a bridge to where we want to go. But crossing that bridge can be a little scary. You don't know if you're going to fall off the edge. You don't know if we're going to go there together. If, one person's going to cross the bridge and the other person's going to get left behind. Maybe somebody's going to jump off the bridge. We don't know, right? There's a lot of risks associated with that conversation, which is why it feels really hard. What are your thoughts as I'm saying this? When you think about just hard conversation, what comes up for you? What are the fears? What are the thoughts?
I think too, what usually happens with me is that I get so twisted in my own mind that I've all of a sudden this hard conversation gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I'm talking myself out of having it, even though it's not as big as what it actually is, but I've built it up to be a lot bigger. Um, I've also recognized that before I have that conversation, I have to look at myself and I have to kind of, okay, what bias am I bringing to the table? What assumptions am I making about this person, about the situation, about, so there's a lot of things that I have to kind of come and just um, listen actively versus just trying to explain, trying to defend. And I think that sometimes can get overwhelming with people, is that they feel the need to cut off the person, hey, when they're being talked to and like defend themselves, where that's probably not the best angle to take when you're having these hard conversations with employees.
And that's the thing is like we often overthink these conversations and we try to figure out all of the things that might be said, that might unfold, and figure out a plan. And the reason we do that is because we don't trust that we're going to know what to do in that moment. So that means we're overcompensating with a plan instead of the skill. So now I have to remember A, B, C, D, all of the different routes, all of my responses. I try to pre-can everything so that I'm ready to shoot them when it happens. So that means I have to hold on to a whole bunch of prepared plans and scenarios and if then this, then that in my mind while I'm participating, which means I'm not listening. I'm listening to shoot one of these things out. And so there is no substitute for, building up the skills. And for me, what has changed is I now go into conversations not overly concerned about what might be. I don't have a big plan. I have some core things prepared that are important to me, such as what is the outcome sought, what is my intention, what is my role in this conversation, things that I want to be very clear about and communicate.
So could you just rewind, clear about and communicate where we lost you?
There because I noticed that the connection kind of dropped. So everything that I want to be clear about and communicate, such as my intention, the outcome sought, my role, my obligation, my responsibilities in this conversation, those things are the things that I want to have prepared. And then I'm going to stay very adaptable and responsive, which means moment to moment, I have to consider where we're at, how much trust do we have, where are we going, what can I be curious about here? What are they saying? What does this mean? Right? And I'm staying responsive to that, which makes it a very different kind of conversation. It does not feel difficult. So how do you do something like that? I'm going to share with you 3 really important keys here that will move you from having to do all of this thinking and pre-planning and approach the conversation with almost this hedging and this like fighting quality and have more ease. Because the other person is likely going through the same thing, is likely concerned, stressed, don't know how this is going to go. So we're both heading into it quite stressed. Mm-hmm. So first thing is building a trusting environment. So that comes down to the relationship. So building trust. Big topic, big topic. Seems like a duh topic, but it's not as easy as it seems.
But I'm a trusting person. It's fine. People trust me.
So when it comes to trust, people have their own unique trust styles. And we approach trust building the way that we trust. But when we're building trust with another person, it's not about how we trust, it's about how they trust. What is important to them? And in the world of trust facilitation, it can be a lot of things. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4 things. It can be a lot of different things that people need in order to feel trust. And trust is critical because trust is critical because trust is what sets up the honesty and the transparency. So you won't get these two things without trust. So what happens to your conversation if you don't have honesty and transparency? So transparency is the thing that allows us to go deeper to get to the root causes. And so they might give you this much transparency, this much, this much, this much, this much, right? How much transparency is going to be determined by your level of trust. And then this transparency that they're giving, how honest is it? So if you don't have a deep enough level of transparency or honesty, what happens to the conversation? I'm going to throw that ball to Kelsey in. What do you think happens? Just imagine it in your mind.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of imagining it that it wouldn't really be so productive, right? It's not really going to go anywhere. And as the employee, they're wondering, what are you going to do with this information that you're trying to get out of me, right? What are your ulterior motives? How is this going to be used? Is this going to be used for good? Is it going to be used for bad? Do I want to speak the truth? Do I want to be transparent? Do I want to be honest? So I know that that's part of the creating that trusting environment. But from the employee perspective, they really don't know where where this is going.
Yeah. So things like, what are your intentions? Why are you asking this question? If you're going to ask a question, give some meaning.
Yeah.
So that they understand. Give your intentions so they understand where you're coming from. Give, what you're going to do with this information, where this is heading, what is your role in this conversation, right? Remember, I talked about these are the things that I prepare in advance because I want to be clear about it. And it is going to make a difference in the level of trust. So level of trust, like the trusting environment, doesn't start when the conversation starts. It starts well before. It starts in every little interaction that you have, from the email that you sent last week to the bumping into each other on the stairs and how that felt, to the thing that you said in the meeting. All of these little micro interactions is either adding to the level of trust or depleting, taking from the levels of trust. And trust is always going up and going down. And going up and going down. So it's very, very normal that trust is going to shift. And your job here is to figure out where that trust level is. How much trust do you have? And what this person needs in order to feel trust, and what ways are you going to make deposits to build it up? Be intentional about the way that you're building trust. Think about when you send that invitation to the conversation. What does that invitation look like? Are you just saying, hey, we need to talk, come to my office? Because they're probably coming in with their backup who probably made a big withdrawal.
Yeah.
Or are you saying, hey, I'm really concerned about X. wondering if we can have a conversation about that and find a solution that works for both of us. Okay. Now it sounds like a partnership.
Mhm.
Probably still will come in with some
Yeah.
concerns, some fear, but at least we don't feel like we're walking to the principal's office, right? That
Mhm.
long walk down the hall, you know you're in trouble, but you don't know what's happening. Yeah, we want to avoid that. So we have a comment here. Trust first starts with the vibe of the leadership and professional attitude. Absolutely. Absolutely. It starts, it's, when you walk in the door, it's all of these little micro things that we do and how we approach leadership. And there's different levels of trust as well. So there's like the trust that you will have with that person. So they might trust you personally. They might say, hey, Kelsey Ann, you're a really good person. And I trust you, generally speaking, but I don't really trust leadership here. And you're part of that. Or I don't really trust management culture here. And you're part of that. So as much as I trust you as a person, you're still part of a system that I don't trust.
Mhm.
Or it could be, I don't really trust the organization. I don't trust how we're treated as employees. I don't trust where we're going. So even though you trust the person individually, that's still going to be a factor. That's still going to affect the conversation. So just something to be aware of in terms of trust, that you could be doing all the right things, and these things are still going to come into play. So managing that distrust might be part of your approach as well. All right, so trust. Makes sense?
Mhm.
Give me a thumbs up if it makes sense. And down in the comment, you could just say, makes sense. We need trust. Trust is super important. We're not going anywhere. If you don't have trust, I'm like, okay, go back to trust building. Put the conversation aside for a moment.
Mhm.
The second piece is leaning into emotions.
In the workplace? What? You're supposed to leave those at the door.
So, what's going to come up in the conversation are emotions, because they're part of our biology. They're part of, as we approach topics that are uncomfortable, your brain is sending a signal to your behavioral system to behave, because we are set up to go towards the things that we want and avoid the things that we don't want. We're emoting all the time. And so through the conversation, you're going to have some emotions come up that you're going to feel like compartmentalizing, or you're going to try to run away, one or the other. And the other person is having emotions come up. And depending on how important the topic is to you and the other person, the higher, the more intense these emotions can be. What happens if we deny the emotions, suppress the emotions, say, you don't have to feel that way? So, Kelsey Ann, as an employee, can you kind of imagine if we're having a conversation, I, as your manager, say, you don't have to feel that way? What is the thought or feeling that comes up?
The thought or the feeling that comes up is, what am I supposed to feel? Right. And it's like, somebody telling me how I'm supposed to feel, and that it's kind of invalidating those feelings that are true and real and I'm experiencing in this moment.
Yeah.
So after that, I don't really want to listen to you. Right. You've withdrawn some of that trust.
Yeah. It can start creating self-doubt. So you can start, well, if I'm not supposed to feel that way, what am I supposed to feel? So starting to doubt yourself, starting to doubt me. and starting to resist because, hey, who are you? Who are you to tell me these things?
Mhm.
And so, how do we move through emotions? I'm asking this question just to get all of you to think about it. I'm always a coach first. So, what would, if we're not suppressing, if we're not avoiding, if we're leaning into emotions, what does it mean to move through the emotion? Because when you move through the emotion, the other side of the bridge is the place we want to be. And the only way to get there is through. So, what would moving through the emotions look like?
Um, as an employee, when you help um, or give the space that I can identify what I'm feeling and that you're reflecting that back to me. I hear that you're feeling frustrated, um, overwhelmed, whatever that word is. When I hear that you've heard me, that means the difference. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And so, first, validating, giving it a name, giving it a voice, and saying, yes, this is something I recognize. I may not agree with it, but I recognize that this is your experience.
Mhm.
Helps to calm the intensity. So it helps us go from that, being stuck in that feeling brain to start thinking again. So now we have communication because we're lessening the intensity.
Mhm.
And that makes way for an exploration. Where is this coming from? Where is this coming up? What's underneath that?
Mhm.
If this emotion is a message, what is the message? What's worth exploring? So you see, this is, we don't know what's underneath. So the behavior could be this. And oh, I recognize that behavior. I've seen it before. I've seen it with multiple employees. And then under the surface, we might have some emotions, and those we can kind of recognize. But what is under those emotions? It's going to be super unique to every person.
Mhm.
It's never the same. So once you start exploring, there's you can't prepare for that. You have to just see what comes up
Mhm.
and where they're willing to go. And that's going to be really dependent on step one, setting up that trust and continuing to nurture the trust through the conversation. So you might ask a question and they go, so I know it cut out there. Did you get my last piece?
Yeah, just rewind a little bit.
So you might ask a question through the conversation. It's going to feel super personal and they're going to go like, kind of take a step back, and you're going to notice it because you've got your finger on the pulse of trust here. So you're like, oh, okay, trust just went down with this question was something that got them to withdraw a little bit. So let me add some meaning. The reason I'm asking this question is because XYZ. And this is where I'm hoping to go. Okay. Now I'm back.
Mhm.
So nurturing and keeping your finger on the pulse of trust through the conversation is super important. And on the other side, like I said, once you've explored, you're going to see the emotions transform, or you're going to see a very clear reason why the emotions are present and an action to be taken, which will transform the emotion. So either way, we're moving towards transformation. And then the third thing is, we might say, well, I'm not a therapist, or I'm not here to just listen to people's feelings. Like, there is a job to be done. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There is a job to be done. And step 3 is about balancing the agendas. So there is a message, there's a comment here by Jason. I'm just going to stop for a moment and just look at that. I've been trying to answer conflicts and conversations with I agree and avoiding, but after it. Yes. Yes. If you could take that but out of your vocabulary and say a yes and, whew, that changes like the dynamic of the conversation, forces me to build in this direction in the communication and reminds me to manage my own side, helps create that divide in responsibility for other people to take their own responsibility. Love it.
Definitely.
Thank you for that sharing, Jason. So balancing the agendas, right? And that's a little bit like what we just got from Jason, is now we're balancing a little bit the agendas when we're using that language for them to keep their ball. We can inquire and learn about their agenda. And we also have to be cognizant of the other agendas. Your agenda as a leader, you've got work on your desk, you've got responsibilities and things to deliver on. And there might be other stakeholders, like team members, project managers, people who are associated with whatever situations is happening. And we're all doing this within the business context. Okay, so I'm drawing a box here because that's our sandbox. That's where we're playing in. So we have to be aware of all of these agendas, from our own agenda to what the employee wants, feels, needs, what's coming up right here in this conversation, other stakeholders, and the agenda of the business, the goals, the strategic plan, the things that we are supposed to be delivering on, our deadlines, our timelines, our policies, our procedures, all of those things are part of it. Okay, so you've got quite a responsibility going into this conversation. There's a lot of things to be managed. It's not just a friendly conversation or a friendly relationship. There's a lot at play. So how would you balance these agendas? So there's two things that you can do in the conversation. You can ask questions, or you can share information. So those are your two kind of like, I don't have a great analogy lined up for that one, but those are your two plays. Those are the two things that you can do. You can ask a question or you can provide information. So what would it mean to balance the agendas if these are the only two things that you can do in your conversation? Kelsey, and I'm curious what image forms in your mind as I share that.
I think it's kind of trying to do both, not obviously at the same time, but ask enough questions that you're getting the intel that you're needing, and
Yeah.
actually listen. So you're listening for the response, you're not listening to respond. And then sharing information to help clarify, not necessarily to call them out or make them feel less than or anything like that, but just so that they understand kind of your business mind and your agenda and where you're trying to steer to.
Anything that's relevant to this situation. And that might not be like hitting them with a document full of information. Hey, this is what you need to know. Probably not going to go over so well. But to drip the information in the conversation as is needed. As needed. And one of the things that I like to do is I will ask the person, what do you know about X? If I think, if they knew about X, that would really change the conversation we're having, but they should know about X. So I'll just ask them. So it seems to me that X might be, something to consider here. What do you know about X? X being the variable. So insert whatever. What do you know about that? And then they're going to tell me, and I'm going to be able to see the gaps. I'm going to be able to, based on what they're telling me, Notice what information that might be missing from this conversation. Oh, okay. And and yes, and add information.
Mhm.
So now that I've shared with you this information and we're considering this, what changes? So now I'm following up. So I asked a question, I add in information, and I ask another question. How does that shift things here? Or how does that shift your thinking? Or what does that change for you? Or how do we need to factor in this information? Just bringing that information in the conversation. So I'm balancing the agendas. It's not just focused on one person's feelings, but it's considering the whole.
Mhm.
Questions that come up for you, Kelsey Ann?
Um, I
Or
guess,
anyone listening?
yeah. One thing that comes up for me is like what happens when they say one thing, but they like they're not very clear. They might not be clear on what they're feeling. It sounds like frustration, but you're hearing anger or fear. Like they're not able to identify their emotion appropriately. Or what happens when they just shut down, don't answer any of your questions, right? So like if you get nothing from them, how do you move through that conversation?
Good questions. Good questions. And I do have answers. But we are running out of time.
Yeah.
So let me tell you that these are things that I cover extensively inside the Executive Edge program. So that is a big part of what we do, is to get really clear on, what am I seeing? What am I hearing? What are these emotions coming up? Why would these emotions come up? If these emotions come up, what questions could I be asking? Right? What do I do with this? What do I do with an angry person? What do I do with someone who's shutting down? What do I do with someone who is um obviously like disgusted and wants no part of it and is like, I'm done talking about this. We don't need to talk about this.
There's nothing to talk about.
There's nothing to talk about. I'm fine. Right? What do you do with all of that? And so these are things that we dive into, because the what would you do would be very different. And it is true that what people will say and what's really going on is different. So what do you do when what they say doesn't match what you're seeing in their body language? Right? What do you do? And those are all things that we really dive into in the program. So if you have these questions and you would like the answer and you would find it useful, let's book a call. Let's talk. My program is often covered by employers. There are grants accessible. And if you book your call today, we do have the EQ kit available. So that means you just click the button, book yourself in the calendar. We're going to take notes of who is in the calendar as of 5 o'clock, and all of those people will qualify for the EQ kit if you decide to join. So it's been a pleasure, Kelsey Ann. Is there anything else that you want to add about the program before we close out today? Anything important?
I think one thing to highlight about the program is that it is very different from other leadership programs in the sense that it is kind of like a combined program where you're going to get one-on-one assessments with Melissa, and you're going to have live group coaching. But through these 8 weeks, you're actually going to also have a direct line to Melissa. So as these issues come up and as you're working through these circumstances and these problems and these situations and these challenges in the workplace, you can Vox or Melissa at any time. They're acting like this, or they're saying this has now come to light. How do I move and pivot? They have that direct line to you, and that I think has made a huge difference in the outcomes of the participants because they've been able to work out these problems in real time, not waiting for the next week to come and sit in the session and discuss it. And they still do that, but they've already had those touch points throughout the week. They've already, usually by the time that we're sitting down and we're having our group session, the problem has usually resolved itself, and they're sharing the resolution.
You've done the integration.
Right.
Exactly. So if you want to book your call, go ahead, use the link down in the comments. If you would like more info, if you're like, oh, this is interesting, but I'd like more information, just drop the Executive Edge down below in the comments, and then I'll be able to message you and answer some of those questions, some of those specifics. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. Kelsey Ann, thank you so much for listening. And I'd love to hear what you're taking away from today. So drop me your nuggets. What was the one thing that was important that you're going to bring into your leadership practice? So drop me one nugget. It is super, super meaningful to me to hear what was important to you. So thank you, everyone, and have a beautiful Wednesday.
Bye.